Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that wee intro there, the elevator music. It's always handy for the waiting room reception before we start week 7 of the In Out crowd. Yes, even though we're staying in again, we are very much out. So, with much discussion recently across our home government of lockdown restrictions being reinstated to try and curb the recent spikes of everyone's least favourite instalment of 2020 and what sounds like the worst Mr. Men character in the world, Little Miss Rona. It's certainly curbed our enthusiasm, but it's not curbed our creativity. It does mean, though, for a lot of us in these hotspot areas, it's another marathon of Netflix, banana bread, and testing just how many days we can go without a shower before our ma starts to get on our case over Zoom. I guess, of course, it is important that we maintain our self-care at this time, be that going for baths, drinking fancy teas, really anything that it takes to keep us calm and chill before having to load up on masks and hand sanitizer, looking like a B-rate version of a Mad Max extra. Something else that is pretty extra, fabulous segue, is our studio audience joining us tonight on a slightly different platform. That means you can see all of our lovely, beautiful faces. There we all are. We have our artistic director, Thomas Small there. We have our special correspondent, Eleanor Walker. And we also have our first guest of the night, which is the fabulous Andy Gibb. So hello to everyone, but particularly hello to you, Andy. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm all right. My mic was muted at the start of that sentence, and that shows how put together my life is right now.
Well, certainly you've been no stranger to lockdown creativity, as well as the rest of our fabulous The Body members, be it podcasts, workshop, live streams and more. You have all been instrumental in helping keep HMS Shaper Caper, chugging along the old River Tay or wherever other waters we fancy travelling to. Particularly with Andy, though, we are looking at our new artifacts for our Hear Me Out LGBTQ plus project. We can't get enough of the rainbow projects. We need to keep them going. Me and Andy have been working together on Hear Me Out, and Andy is creating a piece of digital art with us to use for the Hear Me Out project, which is funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and it is also going to be part of oral history that we're doing as well as that project. So if we could welcome Andy to the stage. Lovely. So Andy, first of all, your piece is called New Waves. Can you tell our fabulous studio audience, as well as the audience watching on Facebook Live, where did that name come from? What inspired you to call it New Waves?
So I actually wrote the piece first before I sort of came up with a name, and going through the poem, it's like, oh, that really stands out to me, and it felt really natural and reminded me sort of of something natural. And people say that sexuality, it's your choice, but no, it's just something that you are. So I thought that sort of stuck to those sort of themes. Thought it would translate nicely into dance as well. And new wave, waves are constant, they happen all the time, but they're always a new one. And it sort of reminds me of how people are growing and changing, they're constantly learning something new, but they're consistently them.
Lovely. Yeah, definitely, with sexuality being fluid, as well as also tying into my next question, what is New Waves about?
So my piece is actually a double entendre. Fancy, I know. And so it initially reads as a love poem to my beautiful girlfriend that's probably watching this. I need to say that. I'm joking. She is pretty though. But it's actually also a love letter to myself because, you know, in the words of somebody we all know, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else? You know, that. So it sort of explores how my family's changed, how my life's changed, and me and my little brother, he's came out as well. So it sort of explores how my family's changed, how they've became like such strong like allies. It's just, you know, they're really supportive, and how like the addition of like us being in queer relationships has actually affected like our life and ourselves and who we are as people.
Beautiful. So absolutely, I'm like, every time you speak about the poem, I'm like absolutely like speechless, because there's one particular paragraph of the poem that I'd like to read out and just chat to you a little bit about. And it's the final paragraph, and it reads as, I see her now, well, not right now, but I see her in the mirror. I see her in my own reflection. I changed and I accepted. I wear what I want. I smile when others laugh at, with her because of me, sorry. Because of her, I am me, and she's the one I love. And that particular paragraph always makes me go, oh, because that was where you really see, you just mentioned there, the love poetry to yourself. And it's when you're talking about her, is it about the wonderful girlfriend, Danielle, or is it about yourself? What was the inspiration to have that sort of double entendre, or that sort of two meanings to the poem? Was that something that just instinctively came through, or was that something that you absolutely wanted to be a bit of a kind of guessing game for the audience?
So I actually, when I write poetry, because I actually do it, you know, kind of frequently, but that's a secret I'll never tell. XOXO, Gossip Girl. So when I write something, I don't just write like a poem. I'll write sort of like a paragraph of like something that's in my brain. So I'll be like, I don't know, let's pretend I'm writing a poem about trees. I would write sort of like, trees are green, they sway in the wind, they have roots in the ground, and I like them. I would then sort of pick out the words and the phrases that really stick out to me and sort of like jumble them around. And like sort of like I was writing, oh yeah, blah blah blah. I love me, I'm so great. And I was like, oh my god, this means two things. So, you know, it was a surprise to me. So hopefully like when you go through it, you're like, wow, oh my god, I didn't see that coming. Unless you've watched this, which you will see it coming now, but sorry, spoiler alert.
That's all right. I'm sure we'll forget, because I did forgot from the first time reading it to us actually developing the work. So when it comes to LGBTQ plus issues, both yourself and your young brother, who we've also worked with, hiya Phoenix, if you're watching, and you've also spoke about how open your entire family is about LGBTQ plus issues and topics. What made you choose this particular subject for your poem/dance film?
So like so many people struggle with self-acceptance, and I am one of those people. Like, I mean, I changed my hair very recently, and I was like, I hate it, I love it, I don't know if I like it. And it's just like everybody has like those moments where they're like, oh, I don't like what I'm wearing, I'm going to take it off. I don't like this, I'm going to change that. And it's just like people often associate sort of like accepting yourself with, you know, your identity and being queer, or, you know, you don't really think of it as just like being a human being. So it's really something I'm passionate about, making sure that everybody's, you know, everybody's happy and everybody likes who they are. So, you know, in the poem I do talk about like all the different sort of like love in my life, including like loving myself, like loving other people loving me. And, you know, I'm very lucky in that sense. Like I have like such great relationships with my friends, my family. I think that some people don't know. So hopefully like, you know, you watch it and you sort of see like, oh, I could have love like that. Or like if you don't have somebody that loves you right now, then that person that loves you could actually be yourself. I just feel like it's really important to highlight like all the different sort of things that can bring you joy from like relationships with other human beings, because we're okay sometimes.
Sometimes we're not as good as dogs, but we have. Well, speaking of joy, your poem illustrates the joy and hope and acceptance and all those other lovely things that we all want for everybody in non-straight relationships. And this is something that we've chatted a little bit about on the In Out Crowd, about representation in a positive light, about alternative relationships to your sort of typical boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl and then happy ever after. Is this something that you think that we do need more of in art, particularly focusing on the positive and the joy that can come from non-straight relationships?
I think a lot of the time people say like, "Oh, I don't want to see like same-sex relationships on TV. That might make my kids gay." But I did not see that. I was not watching Peppa Pig like, "Wow, look, Mummy Pig and Mummy Pig. Wow, that's me, gay forever." Like it's just like something that you are. So no matter what you watch, that's not going to change that. It might make you realize something faster. And in my personal opinion, that's not a problem because if you know who you are earlier, then you can love yourself earlier. So I think in media, some like sort of like bisexual relationships, they're people are often seen as like they're gonna cheat, they're bad. So I think that we are real human beings. We're not like a plot point. It's not like, oh my god, they go out with a girl. Like, it stresses me out. So I think it's important to not only have like representation, but also have representation that is actually true to people, and it not being like, I'm a physically able person, but I'm in a wheelchair just now. Like, I've rewatched some of Glee, so sort of sticking to that, but getting a bit better.
Definitely, yeah. It's almost like normalizing it in that it's great to have. It's important that we are aware of the hardships that our community faces, because especially at this moment in time, there are a lot of hardships. But also, the more that we talk about it, the more normal it becomes, and then hopefully 50 to 100 years down the line, no one has an issue with it, and it's not something that people need to stress themselves about coming out or have major anxiety and real serious mental health problems because the world tells them that they're weird and that they're different. If they have exposure to the in-out crowd, if they have exposure to things like your fabulous poem and dance film, as well as the larger sort of mainstream media, then hopefully that is going to benefit every walk of life and not just people in the LGBTQ plus community.
Definitely. I watched a video the other day of one of my favourite ASMR artists, Sarah Magnesis ASMR. She did a Q&A and she got asked the question, what is your biggest fear? And I've written this down. She wrote that her biggest fear was not being happy. And that really, like, I've never, like, most people say, like, the fear of the unknown, or I'm really scared of sharks. But, that really sort of, it's going to stick with me for a while. I can definitely tell that because, the thought of, like, not being happy, like, your life goal should be to be happy. So you should have a fear of not being happy. And I definitely think that a lot of queer people aren't happy because they don't feel like they can be themselves, they don't feel supported. And it's just nice to think that something that I could do, or something that Shape of Paper as a whole could do, could actually bring somebody that little bit of happiness that they might need.
Definitely. This sparks joy for sure. Well, Andy and I will be filming, socially distanced filming, this Wednesday, so watch this space for the release of our film New Waves, inspired by Andy's poem and Andy's concept for our Hear Me Out project. Again, massive thanks to the National Lottery Heritage Fund for their support. We just hope that the weather stays nice for us on that afternoon. And speaking of the weather, I think it's time to look at our weather. Girl. It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Oh, that hair's so questionable. I'm still absolutely gobsmacked that I actually recorded those films like that. Anyway, first of all, we have got some drizzly clouds, but hopefully they will turn into rainbows popping up across the nation over churches as the Oasis charity campaigns for churches to take action against what's known as emotional and spiritual abuse of LGBT plus people. Steve Chalk, who is a Baptist minister and founder of the Oasis charity, is holding online conferences this Saturday to discuss how churches can be made safe for our LGBTQ plus community. He says that the practices of some churches can amount to serious and sustained abuse, with icon and legend Elton John agreeing with this, saying that churches must be made safe and affirming for all LGBTQ plus folks. In the comments as well, we will link an article relating to this particular subject if you wish to read more upon that and look up the Oasis charity in full. Next up, we have got some bright stars, as you can see. Oh, I did the right hand this time. Fabulous. We have got some bright stars popping up everywhere. Last week, as many sporting celebs and icons shared their stories for National Coming Out Day on the 11th of October. Athletes sharing their experiences include Liz Carmouche of the UFC, rugby player Keegan Hurst, Zach Sullivan of Manchester Storm, Sophie Cook from AFC Bournemouth, and many, many more. A link is also available in our comments to listen to their stories in writing that the BBC had conducted, and also the podcast that they released on behalf of this day. And finally, unfortunately, we are back to the storm clouds with lots of smatterings of rain, because there is big news coming up with the presidential debate heating up, causing much of our community to feel a little bit like this, particularly our trans community. With President Trump's stance on opposing gay marriage and his repetitive actions against transgender people, it may seem like something nightmarish. However, in the UK, we're not far behind, unfortunately, with a fairly recent setback being announced relating to the Gender Recognition Act. And as you guessed, this is a bit more of a deep dive subject into our current affairs, or as we like to call them, our Raisin Liaisons. So this is our deep dive into current affairs, or as we call them, our Raisin Liaisons. My wee Raisin down here, here he is. So the past few weeks, into the next few weeks, there is going to be a major focus on LGBTQ plus attitudes in our Western governments of the UK and the USA, with particularly a bigger spotlight being placed on LGBTQ plus activism, as well as for our cis and straight allies helping us along the way. So in the UK, after waiting 2 years for a government response to the consultation of the Gender Recognition Act, there was an announcement published on the 22nd of September that said while small improvements have been made, as Stonewall UK said, they have fallen far short of its promise, despite a big majority of people who responded to the consultation calling for reform to the Gender Recognition Act. One of the biggest blows for that was relating to people being able to self-identify. So there's been a lot more restrictions placed on that, and it's making it a little bit more difficult for people to actively take control of their own gender identity and their own expression. In the USA, the Trump administration is no different, and actually I would argue that it's a lot worse. The Trump administration has made, prepare yourself, 71 anti-LGBT and anti-trans bills or actions since January 2017. So in 3 to 4 years, they have made 71 either rollbacks, repealing protections for our community, or they've actively created new bills to hold back or to actively harm LGBTQ plus Americans. So while it's no doubt that the LGBTQ plus community struggles for acceptance as a whole, our trans friends, partners and family often receive the most knockbacks. And we're going to discuss why we think that is in a little minute, and also what we can do to prevent it. But first up, we have got a couple of interviews by the fabulous trans actor and trans activist, Alexandra Billings, discussing her experience as a trans person, and also her opinions on why she thinks Donald Trump and his lackeys actually don't hate us, and it's a case of misunderstanding.
I remember, y'all, in 1980 when I began my transition, when the Revolutionary Act was for me to walk outside my front door.
Well, it still is for a lot of us.
Ain't that right? Mm-hmm. But there were very few of us there. And I was never super passable. I never assimilated. I never wanted to. It was never on my radar. I walked out the way I walked out. And I was thrown in jail many, 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 many times just because I stood on the street. And I wasn't even working. I was walking. So I now I'm at a point in my life. I'm 56 years old. I've been living with AIDS now for almost 4 decades of my life. I think our community and the long-term survivors like myself, we deserve not explanation, but we deserve some sort of ownership when we ourselves are put through a test of survival all over again by the cis community.
And you've seen so much change, but what still needs to change?
I think we need more dialogue with the other side. I think we have to talk to those people who we think don't like us. You know, it's funny. I don't think that Donald Trump hates us. I don't think that's true. I don't think he knows us. All we are really to him is an idea. This really scary, spooky idea of all these queer people walking around with signs. And ignorance is born of misinformation. I think he needs education. More than chastising and more than name calling, which really doesn't do much of anything because it never did anything for me when people did it to me. I think it's more about information. So hopefully this generation will start to educate.
You had so many hurdles throughout your life. What were some of the bigger obstacles you faced?
I was the biggest obstacle in my life. I was the one telling myself no, saying that I couldn't, saying that was impossible. It wasn't until I stopped doing that and harming myself with drugs and with alcohol and with sex and with self-mutilation, and it wasn't until all of that shame and humiliation I was able to actually live with and stand on and admire because of where it brought me. It wasn't until I started to do that that I got out of my own way.
How old were you when you learned how to get out of your own way?
I would say late 20s, early 30s. I'm 57 years old now. It's about right in the middle of my journey. I remember the last drug I had was heroin. And I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror and I remember looking at myself and half my hair had fallen out.
Oh my God.
And I had sort of a purple tinge to my skin. My eyes were beet red and my hands looked old. They just looked really old and used. I was looking in the bathroom mirror and I said out loud, "This is no longer working." And that's when I got help. When you say that to yourself and to what I believe to be the divine, when you say that out loud, I think you shift something.
You've lived through being diagnosed as HIV positive. What was that like for you?
So there's this huge billboard on 51st Street in the New York on the Broadway of our show, of our little skit. So I took 95 pictures of it with me in front of it. And I posted it. And people said, "Oh, a dream fulfilled," or "How your dreams are coming true." And I thought to myself, it never entered my mind that that would be true. It's remarkable. My dream was, I hope I survive. I hope I don't have to bury another friend. I hope one of my friend's parents actually comes to claim the body that we left at the Cook County Hospital because no one would bury us in the 1980s. These were the dreams. Once that plague began to be dismembered, I was just thrilled to wake up in the morning. Really, honestly, wake up in the morning. So everything that's happening now is ridiculous. It's insane. I have no idea whose life I'm living. None. It's unrecognizable.
We've talked about how much you've done, what you've been through, what you've seen. Where are you going next? What do you want your legacy to be?
Go to Burger King.
Same, Alexandra, same. So that particular video I was going to cut just before the chat about HIV and AIDS that she did, but I left it in because I thought that was such an important message that she was given about the dreams coming true and the kind of fulfillment, etc. I'd like to invite the rest of my studio audience to come on back with me now, and particularly the first thing that I'd like to touch on is that comment about "I don't think Donald Trump hates us," and other such people. She doesn't think that people who have said very anti-LGBTQ plus things don't actually hate us. It's just the idea that they don't understand. So Eleanor, I see you kind of nodding a little bit there. Can I come to you first for any feedback or comment on that comment?
Sure. I don't think I've heard it as radical as she just said it. And it's actually got me thinking myself, because I think it's so easy to take jabs at Trump, etc. So we all do. But I don't know. I mean, I've seen with my own eyes people who had homophobic beliefs or transphobic beliefs, and then when they learn some things, that's no longer the case. It just genuinely was that they just didn't know or didn't understand. So I've definitely seen it happen before my own very eyes. And yeah, I mean, I would love to. I'm not quite sure I'm quite as positive as she is yet, but I would love to see someone try. I think he needs to be willing too. That's the thing. So if he was willing, then sure, I'd love to see that.
I'll come to just in my route here. I'll go to Andy next. Have you got any takeaways? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I think totally with the misinformation thing, like, as soon as you don't know, like, all the facts, you're kind of like, what? Like, when you initially get taught something in a math lesson and you're like, no, they're just triangles. They don't have all this to them. But, like, when you actually learn more, you're like, okay, that makes sense. And that's the case with, with myself. Like, I could learn stuff to be like, okay, I don't really get that. But then when you actually find out more, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And even if it isn't for you, like, it's still for them. And I think that, being informed, it does help you sort of expand your mind.
And finally, Thomas Small, have you got any comments to add?
Do I have comments to add? Well, let me tell you. Yes, it's really interesting because I agree actually with what Eleanor was saying there about it is really easy to take kind of swipes at him particularly. But I also think it was really interesting what Alexandra Billings was saying there in the little video that we watched, because she was saying that we have to be careful of not being reductive and actually just kind of going down into just name calling, because we've been on the brunt of that name calling and actually know that it doesn't really, it has an impact, but not the impact you're looking for, and it's a negative impact. But I couldn't help but wonder though, because I thought it was quite refreshing to hear an opinion that I wouldn't have thought about with what she said. But I just couldn't get away from the fact that I thought he's the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. Therefore, he has a responsibility to find out and to make connections and to understand. It isn't just he can make a decision. We're not macaroni cheese. We're not just something that you either like or you dislike. You have a responsibility to find out about our community and to understand us and to give basic human rights to, and ensure those human rights are upheld, rather than, just systematically dismantling lots of work that's been really hard fought for over many, many years. So that it troubles me, not her point of view. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. And I enjoyed that kind of provocation, but it does, the thing that I just can't get away from is it is his responsibility to know, because that's his job. You want the biggest job, then you've got to then, pull your socks up and actually do the work.
Well, I mean, that's it, isn't it? Being artistic director of a dance company in Dundee, Tommy, I think I'm right in saying you couldn't get away with publicly saying things that he has said and expect to keep your job and expect to maintain yourself in a professional manner. So it feels frustrating when someone in arguably one of, if not the most powerful position, particularly in the Western kind of civilization, if you like, Western world, that he's not held to that same sort of accountability.
Yeah. Well, because exactly, I was wondering where you were going with that. I was like, are you saying I'm just as powerful as that was? I was thinking, oh my goodness, right?
Well, I would say so, but that's because you're paying salary. So,
if we could solve everything with like some movement, that would be amazing. But no, it's totally true. But it's also about just making sure that actually when you're doing a job, there's a set of responsibilities about making sure that you're looking after everyone. And actually, we should all just be upholding those things anyway, but it's then enshrined in law to make sure that we are looking after everybody. And, with as we've talked about many times before on the In Out Crowd, talking about Black Lives Matters, and about, there's been a real shift in people's thinking recently about being aware or awareness really about where actually we've let sections of the kind of wider community, in this case we're talking about Black Lives Matters, but also with our own community as well, and making sure that we are looking after everyone. I think it just comes down to that, like, be a good human being by actually it's not even tolerating other people, it's respecting other people and actually allowing other people to live. I don't know if you saw something that kind of on Facebook, I was scrolling yesterday and I saw there was a Safer Scotland ad had popped up. I don't know if anybody else has seen that, but
yeah.
Brilliant ad that's kind of talking about, it basically says I'm paraphrasing here because I can't quite remember exactly what it says, but it says something like, "Dear transphobes, you're not welcome here." It's pretty much like, the basis of the conversation. And it's like, isn't that a really brilliant statement to be out there from the Scottish Government? I think that is brilliant. It's perfect. It's exactly what we should have our government saying, that it's like, everyone is going to be looked after, but the comments, you read the comments, and honestly, it is like, it's actually soul destroying. But you do think, so I'm going back to Alexandra Billings here and talking about Trump then, because it is like that situation though. It's like, I tried to fire into some of those comments yesterday and tried to put what I thought was a balanced opinion about, but John, whatever your name is, I'm trying to think of any kind of name that might be in the ether. John Small, I'll take my own name. Small. Then it doesn't matter actually if this doesn't affect you. So we just need you to actually just be an all right human being about other people. We don't need you to be horrible and difficult about other people. It just doesn't. It doesn't matter to your day-to-day life, but it does absolutely matter to the people that ad is aimed at. Like, it does. Mm-hmm. So, but it's, when you go into that conversation in that, you realize you're just feeding trolls. So it's then, at what point then do we recognize that Donald Trump is a giant troll in that kind of sense?
Well,
those points of view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly partial to. I think it was doing research for an Outcrowd, a little like late show, little Tonight Show kind of situation, like Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, all those guys. I do fair enjoy them, and that's most of the little clips at the show with Donald Trump particularly. Is when he's talking about like his press briefings. It's like, oh, I'm going to bring them back because we had the best ratings ever. Despite the fact that people are watching because it is like watching an actual skip on fire, and that I don't even know how to contain this or to blow on it. You can't know. I don't know what's going on. So it shows that he's a reality TV personality and someone who, and this isn't going for all people who are interested in reality TV in terms of who want to go on reality TV, but there is a certain amount of, if you want to be a reality TV star, you've got to have a certain opinion of yourself, in the sense that you've got to, what can I do to get people to want to watch me? They don't get people on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here that are always super likable and that are always really, really, kind and humble. They don't get those people. They tend to get people that are either super sweet, like Nation's Sweetheart, or they get people that are going to be on there and be a troll and get a reaction. But I think, as you mentioned there, Thomas Small, is that it's the level of authority and the level of power. And just since January this year, so I'd say there was 71 anti-LGBTQ+ or anti-trans bills and actions that have been in place since January 2017. But just this year, there has been a filed court brief that has expressed the view that anti-LGBTQ+ discrimination is not a sufficient government interest. So in Kentucky, you can be fired for being LGBTQ+. That was something that was put in place in February this year. In March, there was in the District of Connecticut, they are no longer are transgender athletes allowed to play sports in the field that they choose with their peers. So a transgender woman is not allowed to compete with other women. There is also another rule that violence and sexual harassment towards trans people in May has got is dramatically weakened the protections for survivors that are particularly those that are LGBTQ+. And then just in July, there was another rollback to protect transgender people from discrimination from homeless shelters and housing services, and other funds to help with people that don't have homes that are transgender. So when you hear of all those things being rhymed off, and as we've shown in the comments, there is a link to them, that is really worrying and scary as a trans person. I am so lucky to be in Scotland, because I would be illegal going to America just now. When I'm telling you all of those particular specific bills, how does that make you feel, everybody, as an LGBTQ plus person? Eleanor, I'll come to you first. Comment.
Well, the thing that stands out to me is that you call it a rollback, and it's in the name. It's backwards. it's I've actually physically scratched my head here because it just confuses me. I'm sorry, my comment isn't particularly long and about it, because I just think it's backwards and it doesn't deserve any extra airtime about it. I know we're not even on something mainstream or whatever, but it just riles me up.
Andy?
I think you don't even realise like how actually, the rest of the world affects you as a human being. If you even look at it from like, say you're a really selfish person, right? And you think, wow, that's not happening to me. I don't care. You live in Scotland, everything's great for you. What if you want to go on holiday? Because this is the bit where I start to get really confused and annoyed. It's like, right, okay, I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything, and then I think, okay, I am quite lucky. I am better off, being from Scotland. And then I think, I'm still not, because there's still the people with those opinions that live here. It's just that they aren't in charge and they can't tell you what to do. So, I think it was We Mexico. They have in the town, they have a sign outside, and it says that people that are racist, people that are homophobic, people that are transphobic, or if you have symptoms of COVID-19, you're not welcome in their shop. I thought, wow, what a nice sign. It's kind of funny. It's quite tongue-in-cheek, but they got so many comments on their Facebook saying like, this is shocking, would rather shop someplace else. And I was like, no, I'm meant to be someplace that's like safe for me in the LGBT plus community, and I still don't feel like it is. Which makes me think, like, imagine being somebody that lives in like America or Russia or Poland and literally not being able to leave your house. Like, it shocks me, because I don't understand. I really don't understand prejudice at all. Like, it just doesn't compute with my brain. So I sometimes think, how can anybody not have something to say about it? Because it even if you don't live there, it's still affecting you and what you can do with your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, the only rollback we want is in Asda on a can of baked beans. That's the only rollback.
39 pence to 19 pence.
But it's just, it's ridiculous. But I think it's really important to remember that we're only as progressive as the politicians in government that we actually go out and vote in. So I think that's the real difficulty, is that, I hear quite often from, friends and, people that I kind of meet that say things like, I'm not into politics. And it's like, you're just like, but you have to be, because
that in itself is a political statement.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because then by default if you're not voting, then by default you are actually, one upping the people that we probably don't want in. So it's just really difficult when you kind of, you come up against all that. And I read this like really brilliant tweet the other day from I think it was a guy in America who was then saying that people were saying that Joe Biden was boring, and this man was going, he's perfect. That's what I want. I want politics to be boring. Politics should be able to be politics should be able to be the thing that is just going on in the background that you hear about every 4 years, going, oh, right, okay. And he was going, wouldn't it be amazing for society to not have to really be that bothered by politics? Because actually the people that we elect are just so amazing and incredible and get on with the job, and it's not sensational and just actually does the right things that they actually say they're going to do in their manifesto when they first say it, and then that's what they do. And then we're like, cool, see you in 4 years. You know, and I thought, wow, isn't that like, that Sunday was like, to me, was like, that's utopia. That's like what we're trying to get to. That's the goal. Until then, you know, and it's also that thing as well about, like, I feel really lucky that in Scotland we have Nicola Sturgeon at the moment in time. You know, and regardless of kind of politics, actually, that isn't really even to do with the SNP really, but it's actually to do with actually a leader who is actually leading. And you know, and yes, there's, you know, there's issues, yes, there's problems, but there always, you know, there always is. But I think I kind of feel comforted by the fact that she's trying to do the best she could do. I personally think that's just my completely personal opinion, which is what I'm here to give. But it's that kind of thing. It's like, I either want somebody to be like, you know, her, or, you know, I mean, I obviously don't live in Germany, although Eleanor does. But, you know, Angela Merkel comes across really well as well, and kind of a lot of the kind of conversations that she's really good. Jacinda, I can't remember her surname now. Thank you. In New Zealand as well, she's just been voted back in again. You know, also obviously gets like really high in numbers as well. But it's a lot of people who are actually trying to do good, and it feels really hard that, you know, to think that just 8 years ago, just under 8 years ago, we had 4 years ago, we had Obama in the White House, and you just think, you know, are we going to be looking back in 4 years' time and say, what's going on?
I think it's clear with all those examples you gave there, Tommy, what you're saying is that every country needs a WAP, a woman as Prime Minister or President. Definitely. Well, I mean, that's it, isn't it? You're not, often when we vote, we're not voting for ourselves, we're voting for the people who need the most reform. If you are well off monetary wise, and it's legal for you to marry, and legal for you to have children, and legal for you to work, and you have the least legal barriers, then you're not necessarily voting for yourself, but actually you could be voting for your mum who is disabled and gay, or whatever kind of other margins often that people experience. And I think that's really important, that even if we're not trans ourselves, but actually we are allies not only to each other, but also to ourselves, because every trans story is different, be it for trans men, trans women, non-binary, gender fluid people, gender void people. So sometimes it's handy to have a few tips on how to maintain allyship, particularly for trans folks, and how we can continue to keep those changes at the forefront of our mind. And with that, I'm going to pass over to our special correspondent, Eleanor Walker, who's going to chat to us a bit about trans allyship and what we can all do. Over to you, Eleanor.
Thank you very much, Alex. Just in case this is someone's first time watching, my name's Eleanor, and each show I like to provide a little bit of info on a topic that's super important to the LGBTQ+ community. As Alex said, today I'm going to suggest some ways that folks can be better allies to the trans community. First of all, I just want to clarify a couple of terms before I get properly stuck in. You may have already realised that I'm a sucker for language and definitions. First of all, we can look at the two terms cis and transgender. If a person is cisgendered, that means that they feel that their personal identity and gender corresponds with the one they were assigned at birth. For example, my parents were told I was a girl when I was born, and I still identify as female to this day, using she, her pronouns. So I am cisgendered. However, if a person is part of the trans community, this could mean a few different things. Some transition from their sex assigned to birth, from female to male or male to female, whilst others identify with both genders, and some identify with none at all. This leads quite well into the first way of being supportive of trans people. Listen to individual experiences. Everyone has their own way of living, and if it's new to you, listen, learn, and be respectful. Different people will have varying ways of describing themselves, whether that be transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, or something else, and respect their way of defining themselves. Everyone also has a sexual orientation completely separate from their gender identity, so never assume someone else's. You also may have picked up earlier that I mentioned pronouns. Pronouns are used grammatically to take the place of a noun in the sentence and aren't completely limited to he, she, or they. Remember, you can't tell if a person is trans just by looking, so it's a great start by being open about your own pronouns and politely asking other people theirs. A simple way of doing this may be adding your pronouns to your Insta bio or your email signature. If you're not completely comfortable asking when meeting a new person, listen to the others around you and what pronouns they all use for this new person and follow suit. If you do happen to make a mistake, apologise quickly, correct yourselves, and move on. There are many ways of being an ally, including being in support of all gender public bathrooms, calling out people if they're being transphobic, not having a gender reveal party or baby shower, and making any spaces that you're in as inclusive as possible. A simple way of doing this is gender neutralising your language as much as possible, like, for example, addressing crowds at events as esteemed guests instead of ladies and gentlemen, or asking for the person in the red shirt to come forward instead of the woman wearing red. This advice here is no way exhaustive, and I would hugely encourage you to do some of your own research, as there are countless ways to be a great ally. GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D, is one great resource, as well as listening to podcasts with trans hosts and/or guests, and following people you can learn from on social media, such as Munro Bergdorf, Alok, Chella Mann, Rain Dove. Be active in your allyship, admit when you don't know something rather than presuming, and always strive to learn more. We're hoping that you're having a bit of a laugh with us here on the In Out Crowd, but you're also learning something new as well. I know I am. And back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. That presentation was fierce. Have you ever wondered why we say fierce? Well, I'm going to tell you the day, because it's time for the word of the sleigh. So we're looking today at the word fierce. Now, this is going to get very technical. It's going to be a whistle-stop tour. Don't worry. So it started as a Latin term meaning ferus. Yes, I did Latin for about a minute in high school, so I'm automatically like, what's his name, Aristotle. It meant ferocious, and it was originally used to describe wild animals or mythical beasts in all of these epic poems. It meant wild and it meant untamed, and it was specifically used to describe non-human entities. So be that, as I said, animals or mythical creatures. It would never be used to describe humans. Fast forward to 2020, where it's used to describe a pair of heels. It then developed into the French language to mean strong, bold, or proud. And this was adopted into Middle English language for a while, but it quickly went out of fashion by 16C or 16 AD. While the word ferocious still exists, fierce was often used as a shorthand. It then went on to describe a fierce animal, such as a fierce dog. And it stayed that way for a long time until, like much of our LGBTQ plus vernacular, the mainstream used its influence from Vogue ballroom cultures. Here, during Vogue battles or during different competitions, if someone performed well, they would be told that they were fierce, to mean that their opponent didn't stand a chance because they were so strong, they were so wild and untamed on the floor of whatever the ballroom was being held in. This then maintained and developed to mean that someone's hair was fierce, their makeup was fierce, their heels were fierce. And this just meant that it was so amazing and it was so wild, and normally would be used to describe something as being very bold as opposed to being pretty. This was fierce, like beautiful in a fierce way. And as I mentioned, we now use that quite often. We would describe someone's makeup as being fierce, their wig, their hair, whatever else is used as very much so on things like Instagram and Facebook. It's often commented underneath like, oh girl, you're so fierce. And they normally are. So mainstream is always influenced by our stunning, beautiful language that was created by our LGBTQ plus pioneers in the Vogue ballrooms. And we will always thank them for introducing that language to us. What do you think, everyone? Did you know that about the word fierce? I was talking to my studio audience, sorry.
I certainly didn't know the Latin, put it that way.
There you go.
I always associated it with sort of like knights or something, you know, like them being fierce in a battle. So it's good to see that, you know, it was still a battle word, but just a bit of a gay battle word, you know.
Yes. No, not like a battle with spears or something. Yeah, no, rather than it being nice or cute in a fierce way, it was so stunning that it was like fierce, like you're scared of how amazing they were.
Yeah, that was really cool. I didn't know that at all. But yeah, I suddenly felt like a real urge to say fierce. Like, and I don't think I've really ever called anything fierce. But yeah,
that's what you're going to be saying it for the rest of the week now, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to everyone, to my studio audience, and also for all of you joining us on Facebook Live. Bringing into our caper conclusion, we've decided that yes, language may change, lockdown restrictions may change, political parties in power may change, the things that need fighting for may change, but some things will never change. One is the amazing resilience and strength of our LGBTQ plus community, and the other, sorry, Eleanor, I know you were talking about the cheap jibes, but I've got to do it. The other thing that will never change is the fact that Donald Trump thinks he's pure gorgeous.
I said, First Lady, am I the most handsome president ever? Yes, absolutely. I said, who could top me? Well, she said, well, JFK was good looking, but nothing like you. Nothing like you, Don.
No. And also, he needs to bear in mind that who can top you means something very different here at the In Out. With that being said, thank you so much again, everyone. We do have another instalment of the In Out Crowd coming up in the next 2 weeks, so make sure that you keep an eye out for us. Who knows what we'll be talking about then. And we also have mindfulness sessions this Friday on Zoom, so if you want to join in with that, then just let us know at hello@shapercaper.com, or you can fire us a wee direct message. It has been the In Out Crowd. I've been Alex McCrossan. Thank you so much to my studio audience, and we'll see you again soon.